Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
I don't know, guys. That's about as close as it gets to being perfectly on time. Like, literally, decided to switch it up a little bit today. No cold open. But as soon as my phone switched over to 7:30, I hit that intro. Welcome, happy Friday. Just thought I would hit you guys before the weekend starts. Take tomorrow off. Like, guys, we're getting right down to it. We're literally days away. Less than 2 weeks, obviously. Like, it hit me today. Do you get moving anxiety? Like, this isn't really a full move, obviously, but I've moved so many times in my life. Maybe that's where it comes from. But it just hit me today. I was running errands and running around, going back and forth to the gym, and I thought, oh, damn, I have to start packing on Sunday. Like, we're hitting the road Wednesday, the 16th, driving from West Virginia back to Seattle so I can start covering training camp. It's going to be here quick. So I got to start making some decisions and deciding what to bring back, what to pack, what to leave here. It's my fiance ended up getting extended here at the same hospital she's working at, so she'll be here through October. And so I don't have to like fit all of our worldly belongings. Well, we have some stuff in storage. I don't have to fit it all in the car, but I got to decide what to bring back and leave enough room for Butch and all of that. So, man, we're getting there, which is where today's storyline came from. And if you watched yesterday's show, and some great comments, some great engagement and interaction on that, thank you for doing that. You'll know that this was supposed to be yesterday's show, and then I saw that piece that pissed me off, and I just had to react to it. So a lot of you guys seem to enjoy that, so thank you for that. And then I just thought I'd throw it in. You know, sometimes when we've done these live streams over the last couple of months, when things are a little bit slower, just throwing some off-topic things in there. And last night, sort of just organically, a conversation started over in the comments among you all about bands and singers and stuff like that. So I was driving around today, and I was kind of going down memory lane, listening to an old band that I used to love, and decided, you know what, I'll do a top bands list. And here's what's funny. Well, first of all, the band I was listening to was Slaughter, and they're not on this list, but just a band that I love, and I just kind of hadn't listened to them in a long time, was remembering just how much fun they are. Like, a lot of bands from that era tried way too hard to be serious and be tough and be right and be manly, even though they were wearing spandex and had their hair, down to their armpits and had a half a bottle of Aquanet in their hair. Slaughter was always just a band that I loved the talent. Got to meet Mark Slaughter and interview him one time, and the drummer Blas Elias, nicest guy, one of the nicest guys I've ever met. Always appreciated his talent, but their stuff, I'm just being reminded as I go through their catalog, it was just a lot of fun. Had a party vibe to it. Like, they're the band you would have come play your house party, and they would kick ass. So that was a lot of fun. But as I started putting it together, I was going to do a top 5. Because that's kind of the cutoff. That's what we do. We do a lot of top 3s and top 5s in this business. But I couldn't. I felt like I was leaving too many people out, too many bands out by doing a top 5. So stick around for that if you want to. And we can compare some notes, and I'll give you my top 10 favorite bands. But first of all, the 5 most compelling storylines of training camp. Let's get right into it. Got some banners here. Oh, let me do this first of all. Let's go here and turn these comments on, get these rolling down in the left-hand corner. Dogzilla here first, always. Not always, but mostly. Like, he's that kid that comes into class and sits in the front row and goes, I'm here. I'm here. Dogzilla, good to see you always. And which dive bar are we coming from today? Brenda's Blue Moon. Hey, by the way, you didn't know this. We didn't coordinate this ahead of time. Did you know? We've talked about beer here on this program before. We talked about it last night, and how my palate's changed. I just can't drink IPAs anymore. And so, like, my go-to at home this time of year often is Sam Adams Summer Ale. Love it. But Blue Moon, like, when I just don't want to put any thought into it, especially because I got that 15-pack cans. Love that. It's reasonably priced, tastes good. ABV is solid, close to 6%. Like having it in the fridge. Been drinking a lot less beer lately. but discovered this in the last couple of weeks. They stock this at the little mini mart next to the hospital where my fiance works. So I drop her off and picked one of these up tonight. So Blue Moon makes a new version now. This is called Extra. Again, Dogzilla didn't know that we were going to do this. And I don't know if you can see that round label at the bottom, but it's basically Blue Moon ramped up to 8% ABV. And I love it. Like 2 thumbs up. I give it an A, 5 stars. It's similar flavor profile to Blue Moon, but 8% alcohol, and it doesn't feel like it. Like the extra alcohol content cuts through some of the sweetness and the citrus of regular Blue Moon, but it keeps enough of the flavor profile that it's maybe the most easy drinking 8% beer I've ever had. And I stopped drinking IPAs because they're just too strong. They give me heartburn. Those of my younger viewers, you have that to look forward to. I'm just telling you right now, spoiler alert, everything causes heartburn when you get to a certain age. But certainly beer is one of the reasons I've been drinking a lot less of it, just trying to get in shape too. But I love it. It really balances. I feel like it's more balanced than the regular version. So it's the only place I've seen it. I don't know if it comes in 12-ounce bottles or cans yet, but keep an eye out for it if you're a fan. Hey, Hank says, saw you in the comment section of Bootleg Football. Is that what brought you here, Hank? Welcome. Love those guys over there. Reached out to Brett Coleman the other day. We were chatting back and forth. I was hoping he was going to do a camp tour this year. He's not. So I was hoping to be able to meet him in person, but he's not going to be there. But he's super busy right now. They're doing the 32 teams individual preview shows. So that's what you're referencing is the Seahawk version. If you guys haven't watched that, get over and do it. Those guys do such a tremendous job covering the entire league. And you really feel when they dive into one individual team that they know that team intimately. That's hard to do. I've been critical of some of those who don't do it well. Case in point last night. If you haven't watched that show, by the way, check it out. That was fun. But he and EJ, and I know EJ's from the Northwest. I'd like to get a hold of him. I don't have any contact info, so I'm trying to work that through Brett. But just trying to find some time in Brett's schedule sometime during training camp, get him back on the show. But love what those guys do and all the success that they are experiencing. Juan Adame from Sacramento, California. Good to see you. Haven't been through Sacramento since February. I drove through there on the way from Seattle to Mesa, Arizona, as I was one day into my venture of doing this full time and stepping away from my past career. So good to see you. Nasir says, what's up from Elk Grove, California. Good to see you guys. I guess Seattle's putting their best foot forward for me. As soon as I get home, it's supposed to be in the 90s this week, and everyone back there is freaking out. I'm going to freaking love it. Because, I've been living with humidity here for the last couple of months. My first experience here in this part of the country where it's, I'm getting pretty used to like 90, 95 with much, much thicker humidity than I'm used to in the Pacific Northwest. So bring it on. B90, B95. It's going to feel really good to me. Like it was frustrating in one sense here because I started running again about a month ago, and found a really cool place here next town over, Charleston, which is the capital city here in West Virginia. And they have a beautiful, like 8-mile long river walk through the city. Goes up right by the capital along the Kanawha River. And started running that again. Felt immediate impact from it. Was really enjoying it. And then the heat and humidity kicked in. And unless I can get out there by like 8 or 9 in the morning, it's just, you can't do it. I'm not going to run in that. I'm just not. And so looking forward to getting back home. And where I'll be staying in Maple Valley is right on the Cedar River and that long path there. So I'm excited about getting back into running again when it's not 95 degrees or 70% humidity. Got a super chat here from Noah. Appreciate that. Thank you very much for contributing. One of the concerns from pundits, besides Darnold and the O-line, is not having an outside receiver. How do you think this offense will navigate that? Hold that thought, because that's a spoiler alert. It's that part of the discussion will be involved in one of my 5 camp storylines. Hamza says, "What's up? Good to see you as well." Dogzilla is going to try the Blue Moon Extra. I'm not endorsing this, but if anyone's out there who owns Blue Moon now? Is it Coors? Is it Miller Coors still? It's always been brewed by Coors, which I always found funny back when I was working in bars. Even back to when I was at Tap House Grill. We talked about this last night. Shout out Tap House, RIP. 160 beers on tap. Basically modeled their business concept after what the Yard House did. Ironically, now Tap House is out of business and shut down all their locations, and Yard House is in Seattle. It's kind of funny. But the people, especially like millennial type age, that drink Blue Moon and think they're drinking a microbrew and think that they're like super kitschy and hip beer drinkers. And then you're like, Coors brews that, right? Yeah, but not that it's a knock on the product itself, just the idea that kind of comes along with it and the vibe that comes along with it. And some people think they're drinking like a really fancy microbrew, small craft brewery, and it's not. It's a macro brew for sure. Bill says, "What up? What did I miss?" Nothing, because I'm on a tangent. We're just chilling. Hey. Also love the show. Excited for the preseason. Already locked in for the MLB draft. Apologies to those few of you who have checked out the new channel, Mariners Forever, with Michael Thompson and myself. We haven't been able to connect the last couple of days. We were supposed to record a show today, and I just wasn't feeling well this morning, and so we're going to try to get together in the next 24 hours before the draft on Sunday and do a little mock, but we will be reacting to the draft Sunday night. When it's all said and done, the Seahawks, or the Mariners with 2 picks on Sunday, because they have that sandwich pick, the competitive balance pick. I think it's 35 right after the first round. So if you want to check that out, get over to Mariners Forever and subscribe. Hey, Brendan's drinking a regular Blue Moon right now. Yeah, again, I don't know. Maybe this is a test market. It's the only time I've seen it. I haven't seen it at Kroger here, which is the big supermarket chain here in this area. It's just at this little mini mart, and they were carrying these 19 ounces. But yeah, check it out. It's worth it. Noax says, "Love the content, Dan. Stay cool. Appreciate you." I'll tell you one thing I have learned is I've had my current car for like a year and a half, and it's almost 2 years, and I've just recently learned how to use the app because I can start it and get the AC going ahead of time. That's a great feature. That is a great feature, and I've finally learned to use it. All right, let's get into this. We've dilly-dallied too long. My 5 most compelling storylines as we get to training camp. By the way, if you don't subscribe to the channel, please do already. Over 10,000 subscribers now. Took us 2 years to get there. Hoping to double that in the next year. I know that that's aggressive, but I'm hoping with the exposure and the additional access that I'll get this year being credentialed, and I'm being positive, I'm being optimistic. I've been promised credentials for the first few days of camp, and then we'll sit down and talk. I'm hoping to be credentialed for the whole season. That's what I'm planning on. So I'm hoping that'll just kind of ramp up those subs a little bit, get us in front of some new eyes and ears. So big shout out. If any of you are regular watchers and you don't subscribe, just hit that button. Appreciate it. It's free. You don't get spammed. You don't get notifications or anything else unless you hit that bell button. All right, first one is number 5. New deals. Like the Seahawks have a long history of handing out contract extensions the first week of camp. If you go back over the last 3 or 4 years, I did this in detail a few weeks ago, but just off the top of my head, like DK's last big contract got done on like the 27th or 28th. Geno, Russ, like some of those guys that get extended. Julian Love's deal last year, I think. His second extension, right? Happened about that same time. Camp starts in the 23rd. Who's going to get an extension this year? It's tricky. It's interesting. There's a lot of nuance and layers to it. When you talk about the the obvious ones that are eligible for contract extensions that are on their rookie deal. And it's two different draft classes, right? Because we're talking about a different parameters of Charles Cross because he's a first-round pick. He gets that fifth-year option. And so he's eligible. But the Seahawks also picked up his fifth-year option. So he's signed and locked down through 2026. And the 2026 number, because he hasn't made any Pro Bowls, he hasn't hit those escalators, it's like, I think it's like $17.5 million. That's a very reasonable cap hit for a good, still young, still just 24 years old, I think, 25, like can continue to develop. I think Charles Cross can become a top 10 left tackle in this league. $17.5 million in 2026 is nothing, really. And so there's no urgency there. And so I wonder, he recently switched agencies or signed with an agency. He represented himself as a rookie, which I don't know why all rookies don't do that, because it's slotted. So you save that 3% agent fee or whatever, and then you can hire like a business manager to get endorsements for you and stuff like that. But I digress. So the urgency isn't there. There's no real advantage to signing him now except getting out in front of it. What if he goes out and the offensive line is vastly improved, which I talked about last night? Check that show out. And he has a great individual year where he gets some accolades and he starts to get recognized, and he starts showing up on these lists, PFF or whatever, and top left tackles in the league, and maybe even gets a Pro Bowl nod or what have you. Then all of a sudden he becomes more expensive, right? And so if you can get him to agree to a deal now, you probably, most likely you save a little bit of money. But there's no urgency to do it. Boye Mafe, Kobe Bryant, Kenneth Walker, Abe Lucas, Reek Woolen, they all have these sort of qualifying factors attached to them that just bring into question how much urgency the team should have in trying to extend these guys before the last year of their rookie deal. Let's work backwards. Reek Woolen, I think 4 of these 5 have something in common, and that is we see the talent, we see star potential, but we haven't seen it Sunday to Sunday to Sunday to a point where we know what their value really is. Like, we've seen the best of Reek Woolen, we've seen the worst of Reek Woolen. We haven't seen the consistency. Now, there's a risk. I think Reek exemplifies this idea as much as any of these players. Kenneth Walker is also in the same boat, I would say. Well, I'll put Mafe in this boat too. Mafe, Walker, and Reek Woolen, I think, are in the same bucket. We know the upside. We know the ceiling. There's a risk in not extending them early, because if they go out and have big years, now if you want to keep them, they're going to be more expensive. I think Reek is probably the best example of this, because the corner market is sort of continuing to grow and is really blown up with some of the new deals these young corners have signed around the league. If they don't extend Reek, and remember, it was just a little over a year ago when this whole new coaching staff was brought in, where Leslie Frazier was talking about how they think so highly of Reek, they think he can travel at some point in his career with number 1 receivers. If they still feel that way, and they feel like he's part of the long-term future, despite some polarizing opinions among the fan base, then you want to try to get ahead of that to save yourself some money. Because if he goes out and has a great year, he picks off 6 balls, he's top 10 in the PFF scores, he makes a Pro Bowl, whatever. Now he's a, 17, 18, $19 million a year player. So if there's an opportunity there, maybe you try to get in on it if you have conviction that he's a player that you want as a foundational player. And the same could be said about Boye Mafe. We've seen the upside. We've seen the 7 straight games of the sack. We know about the athleticism. We haven't seen the consistency week in, week out. Some games you forget that he's on the roster. Sometimes he struggles a little bit setting the edge in the run game. But again, if he goes out as a young athletic edge player and has a huge year and gets 12 sacks, like he might price himself out of the Seahawks plans. So again, I think that's a very similar situation to what they have with Reek, because you can picture it, you can envision it, you can see the ceiling. And both of these players have the opportunity and the potential to be very, very expensive players and make themselves a lot of money. I think there's a better chance, just based on things that they say, vibe, read that I get, some things other people are saying. If the team were inclined to extend one of these two players early, I think it would be more likely Reek than Mafe. Because I think Mike McDonald feels like he can get edge players, he can get the most out of them. We saw what he did in Baltimore with some retreads, right? Guys like Kyle Van Noy and Jadeveon Clowney, Brent Urban. But he wants his edge players to be complete players, week in, week out. I don't think either of those players gets an extension this year. Maybe at mid-season, if they're killing it and they become the player the team wants them to be, and then you can do a deal that doesn't really impact your cap space now. You kind of work it towards next year. But I just don't think the team is convinced yet about either of those players. Now, I could be wrong, and we could find out news in the next couple of weeks, to which my immediate reaction would be, okay, they believe it. And then I'm on board. Walker's a different animal because he's a running back. And it's such a unique situation with, the league has been trying for 10 years to normalize running back salaries, and we saw them come way down. We saw veterans have a real hard time finding work. And then in the last couple of years, we've seen some veteran running backs change teams and do really well in the prime of their career. Guys like Josh Jacobs and Aaron Jones. And Saquon, obviously, is a great example, but he might be the anomaly, right? But Walker is perfectly capable. I've talked about it here on the show many times, of a Jahmyr Gibbs type season where he goes out and he runs for 1,500 yards and he catches 50 balls, an Alvin Kamara type season. And now suddenly at his age, he can command a second contract that might be approaching Saquon territory. I don't know if the Seahawks have any interest in signing a running back to a contract like that, given the youth and the talent in that running back room already. Like, are you going to give Ken Walker $10 million a year when you have Charbonnet, McIntosh, Martinez behind him? That doesn't make a lot of fiscal sense. So I don't really expect to see any of those guys signed early. Cross is a possibility because I think by picking up the fifth-year option, obviously, and with the issues they've had on the offensive line, he's a guy that I don't think there's any question they want to extend. It's just a matter of, is Cross willing? Because he might see the opportunity as well. Hey, if I go out and have a big year, my value goes up. So honestly, I don't think any of those get done. Kobe Bryant is a different story. I think Kobe's a guy that kind of changed his profile, changed his story, converting from corner, really showed last year what kind of player he could be, but hasn't accomplished anything yet that would lead you to think that he'd be near the top of the safety market. And so this is probably another case where, what does the player think their value could be? Because the Seahawks go to him and try to save some money, right? Try to sign a 2 or 3 year team-friendly extension and show some faith in the player, where Bryant and his reps might think, no, second year being a full-time starter, we're going to bet on ourselves. So I would say if I'm putting a number on it, like 1 to 10, with 10 being the most likely, I'd say there's a better than 5 chance none of these guys get new deals before the end of training camp. I would prefer that they hand a couple of them out. And then Abe Lucas, I think, is just a really unique situation because of the injuries. I don't think they're going to take that risk. But then again, they're the ones, if they do, right? If we find out a week and a half from now, the Seahawks have extended Abe Lucas, And some of you are out there looking at each other going, what? No, with that knee? Well, then they see this. They see the scans. They've been in on the PT. They've been in on the rehab and everything else. Their team doctors know them as well as anybody. That would tell you that, oh, okay, there's nothing chronic, nothing long-term. That thing's fixed. They feel good about it. So yeah, it's funny because I think we've been looking ahead to this for the last year or two as potentially a really impactful offseason when it comes to extensions. And I don't know that any of them make a ton of sense right off the bat. I mentioned this earlier, teased it a little bit. My fourth most compelling storyline going into camp is the wide receiver room scramble. The bottom of the wide receiver room, right? We have 4 locks. JSN, Cooper Kupp, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I know some of you think that maybe he doesn't make the team, but I think he was brought in here to play a specific role. He's got experience in the scheme. There's a bunch of young receivers in this room. He's a lock, as is Torrey Horton, the 5th-round pick out of Colorado State. Would love, first of all, to get to camp in a week and a half and see that Torrey Horton's 100% ready to go. We saw him running drills, and he was going full speed in the mandatory minicamp. But hopefully he's fully cleared and ready to go, because the question earlier about the X receiver, like, that's it. That's your guy. Anyone who says the Seahawks don't have a true X on their roster, that's your guy. It's Torrey Horton. He's a complete package. He can play the X. He's a fit there if he's healthy, and once he kind of beats the learning curve. But you got a bunch of guys on the bubble that are really intriguing. Obviously, we all love Jake Bobo. Congratulations. Just got one of like 3 guys on the team that got engaged this last week. You've got White times 2, right? You have Ricky White III, and you have Cody White. You have Tariq Young, who we keep waiting to sort of fulfill some of the promise we saw from him as a rookie, the athleticism and the versatility. And then Steven Sims, who just kept turning heads during minicamp and OTAs, smaller guy, shifty, making plays on the field, but also he's probably the best returner of the bunch, and might have a leg up on some of the guys when it comes to that. The question with the wide receiver group, and we've talked about this before, is how many are they going to keep? If it's 6, you feel pretty good about Jake Bobo and Ricky White making the roster. And then you figure Cody White, Tariq Young, Steven Sims can all get to the practice squad. But they might not keep 6 because Kubiak doesn't use 3 wide receiver sets as often. He does use 2 and 3 tight end sets more often than many other teams. He uses 2 back sets more than other teams. He uses a fullback. They have to account for a roster spot for a fullback. They have to account for a roster spot for a third quarterback this year. They typically start each season on the initial 53 with 6 receivers. At times it's been 7. Could it be only 4 this year? I tend to think it'll be 5, and they'll figure out a way. There's some spots on defense they can kind of rob from as well, as they have a bunch of guys that can play multiple positions. But that's one that's going to be fun to watch. And it's one that you actually can get a feel for in camp, and especially the preseason games, because these guys actually get opportunities to make plays. Whereas some of the other, some of the other positions, especially up front, sometimes it's tough to make an impression in practice because they don't let you hit. Number 3, my number 3 most compelling storyline. What's Byron's next step? What is in store for him and for us, for Byron Murphy in his second year? We know, and we talk about this all the time on the show, that the developmental curve among linemen is slower than other positions. We see that on the offensive line, but even more so on the defensive line. There was a podcast I've referenced multiple times. Marcus Spears was on it, and there was somebody else that had played in the league for a long time that was a lineman. They were on a podcast, and they were talking about this idea. And what they agreed on is, look, we're not human beings, men, athletes, football players they don't reach full physical maturation until they're 25, 26 years old. And so sometimes physically you're a child going up against grown-ass men in the NFL. And remember, when he was drafted, Byron Murphy was only 21 years old. So he's a guy that, he's 3-4 years away from reaching that physical maturation. And yet We still saw the flashes of his skill set and the things that he did well at Texas carrying over into the pro game. We saw teams double teaming him on a regular basis at different points all throughout the season. But we also saw him playing more nose tackle than any of us would like. The snap percentage doesn't seem that out of whack. It was about 14, 15%. That's not crazy. It's not like he was a full-time nose tackle. But I think we all agree we would like to see him play 3-tech full-time and not have to play nose tackle at all. But again, another offseason goes by where the Seahawks don't go out and make that definitive move at the nose tackle position that we can all look at and say, that's the guy. That's the guy that's going to take the pressure off Byron Murphy. They brought Jonathan Hankins back again. That's great. But, I think the general consensus last year was that he had lost a step, wasn't the player that he was even the year before in Dallas. It was a little bit of a surprise that they brought him back. The only reason it wasn't a surprise is because they didn't address it in the draft. In a draft that was heavier than normal. In fact, according to Daniel Jeremiah, had about twice as many starting caliber interior defensive tackles in this class than we usually see. And they just didn't address that. And so, you always hear this like, well, they like this guy and they like that guy, right? And those two guys that have an opportunity to make this roster as a nose tackle, along with Jonathan Hankins, are Quinton Bohanna and Brandon Peely. Bohanna's about 335, Peely's about 355. No, it's the other way around, right? Bohanna's 355, Peely's 335. Both interesting stories. Bohanna played about a 25% snap share his first 2 years in Dallas, playing for Aden Dirty, and so there's some familiarity there. Peely's really interesting to me because at USC, he kind of had to reinvent himself. He was a 335, 340-pound nose tackle, and then he tore his ACL or his Achilles. I think it was his ACL. So he remade his body, got down to 315, and then so he kind of did it in a different way, and that allowed him his last year at USC. He was much more dynamic, especially as a pass rusher. Well, now he's back up to, they list him, he's currently listed at, hold on, if my mouse would work. He's currently listed at 334 pounds, so he's kind of added the weight back on, and now he's like 3 years removed from the ACL injury, right? He's a guy that's got a little bit of juice to him, even more so than Bohanna. So maybe one of those guys establishes themselves. And that would take the pressure off Byron Murphy. He wouldn't have to work into that rotation. It would also free up Jarran Reed a little bit too. He wouldn't have to do that. But I also think if neither of those players, and they've both had issues in their careers staying healthy, if neither of those players establishes themselves through the preseason, I think there's a really, really good chance that at the cut to 53, where there's like 1,400 new free agents, it's like a whole new wave of free agency that become available, that they'll be hunting really hard for a more proven veteran nose tackle. Those guys tend to get released sometimes on those last cut downs. My number 2 most compelling training camp storyline, where's Devon? Where's Devon Witherspoon? Is he going to play more outside corner this year, with the assumption that many of us have had since he was drafted that Nick Emenwari is going to play primarily close to the line of scrimmage, more in the box this year in his rookie year, take some of the responsibilities off of him. He wouldn't have to play a lot of deep safety anyway because we're pretty set there. But if he can play some slot responsibilities, cover some tight ends, running backs, cover the middle of the field a little bit if he gets comfortable there, does that allow Devon Witherspoon to play more on the outside? I have mixed feelings about this idea. I've gone back and forth on it over the last year, from listening to him on John Gruden's podcast talking about how he has to take guards on because he plays in the box so often. I don't want that for him long term, not at 190 pounds on a good day. But by the same token, he can be so damn dynamic in there. I don't want to take that away. I don't want to move him full time to the outside either. Even 5th pick in the draft, there were questions about him coming out of Illinois about deep speed and being able to hang with some receivers and press man on the outside full time. So I want that versatility, but how are they going to use him? And I think that's one of the things Greg Bell talked about on the show when he came on. Like, it's hard to judge certain aspects of players' games in OTAs, minicamp, and even in training camp because pads aren't on, can't hit that often. But you can see, and he talked about how one of the things he does look for is personnel usage. Where are guys lining up? How are guys being used? And even though, they don't want to give all of that away, and there are certain aspects of practice where reporters aren't allowed to report on what they see. I'll get to experience that this year. And so my apologies in advance that there are some things I won't be able to tell you. That we'll be able to see some of that because they're going to practice it, right? So I think that's a really intriguing one. And also just, side note, I think Witherspoon's a guy that none of us doubt the talent. No one around the league doubts the talent, and yet he hasn't quite broken through where he's showing up on like these top 10 lists and stuff. So I think just sort of a side note here, can he make that step too? Only one career interception, and it happened in his third game as a pro, that Eagles game, that 92-yard pick six. Hasn't picked a ball off since. If he gets some ball production, kind of takes that next step where he becomes a more impactful player week in, week out, I think we can all agree that would be a good thing. And now, do I have a drum roll? I don't think I have a drum roll. How do I not have a drum roll on this thing? Nope, I don't. Okay. I mean, I have this. But we've arrived at the number one most compelling storyline for me heading into camp. How good is Gray? Talked about the offensive line yesterday again, obviously, as I reacted to that ESPN offseason ranking or grade piece that ticked me off. Look, he's been plugged in since the day he was drafted at left guard. There is no competition there. There's still some skepticism. Some of you are still skeptical. Some of the experts are still skeptical. Some of the analysts. Only in the sense that, hey, he's a small school guy. What if he's overmatched? Comes from North Dakota State University. Granted, North Dakota State University in the last 7 or 8 years put quite a few offensive linemen into the NFL. Seahawks have 2 of them, Jalen Sundell being the other. But they've had 2 second-round picks in the last 5 years. Cody Mock, Dylan Radins. Both second-rounders. Mock last year, Radins in 2021. Is Gray's Able going to be Cody Mock? Or is he going to be Dylan Radins? Mock, last year as a rookie in Tampa Bay, started all 17 games. Finished, according to PFF, as a top 20 guard overall and almost top 10. He was 11th in pass protection in the NFL. Like, no question that Cody Mock was a plug-and-play starter as a rookie coming from a small school. Didn't make the Pro Bowl, didn't get all pro votes. Like, is he a star or is he just a plug-and-play, like a really good, competent cog in a good offensive line? We'll take that. But we expect Gray's Able to be more, right? He was also drafted quite a bit higher. Or is he going to be Dylan Radins, who, similar profile, comes out of NDSU, goes to the Senior Bowl, impresses the hell out of people. He can play guard or tackle, right? Goes to Tennessee, second round, 2021. Never really catches on. He has injury issues. He gets moved a bunch of different positions. He's a tackle. He's a guard. Never catches on. They don't re-sign him after his rookie deal's up. He's a free agent last year. Seahawks brought him in for a visit, kicked the tires on him. He ends up signing in New Orleans for 1 year, $2.25 million. That's not a starter contract. They don't really have an obvious starting spot open there. It's kind of like the deal Tevin Jenkins signed in Cleveland, like it's a backup deal. Now, don't get me wrong. Unless this is your first time watching the show, you know how high I am on Gray's Able. Watched him at the Senior Bowl. Talked to him at the Senior Bowl. Saw what everyone else saw. If you're concerned about him coming from a small school, you shouldn't be, because he was going up against the best of the best at the Senior Bowl from much bigger programs, SEC players left and right, playing alongside SEC players and playing better than them. He was hands down, without a doubt, the best offensive lineman at the Senior Bowl, and maybe the best player overall. Just consistently, only maybe lost 1 or 2 reps that I saw, both with my eyes and on all the video that they let us have from the Senior Bowl, going up against guys from much bigger schools. Meanwhile, The other offensive linemen that are playing next to him that are from bigger schools struggled against these same players. Guys with much bigger profiles that were 5-star recruits that go to big schools. He was the best player in Mobile. I think he's one of the safest players in this draft. I think his floor is extremely high. I think his floor is 10-year starter that you can just count on even if he doesn't become an all-pro. But until we see it with the pads on and the bullets flying, it is a question. And so I wanted to address this today because I just kind of wanted to put it out there that, like, I'm not taking this for granted. I'm bullish as hell on Gray's Able. I was ecstatic that was the pick. The commitment to that position group, but also just that player. I feel good enough about that player. Like I said last night, I think, and I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one. We already talked about bootleg football. Heard Brett Coleman say this with EJ the other day, and it's one of the things I related last night, is the Seahawks have come out of the last 2 drafts, this year and last year, with what I would argue is the consensus best wide zone scheme fit guard in both drafts. Christian Haynes and Gray's Able. But until we see him do it, with the new coaching staff, the new scheme, everything else, there is still a question, and I'm willing to admit that. So those are my 5. Before we get into another list that's kind of fun, let's check out some of the reaction here from you guys. Good to see you, John, as always. Looking forward to the position battles. I think, man, this preseason is going to be fun, right? Nearly half the 90-man roster are players on rookie contracts. There is competition at nearly every single position group, including some key ones. I think we're going to see a lot of the second unit defensive players in this preseason, and that'll be fun. You know, I want to see I want to see Drake Thomas running around making plays. Tyrese Knight, even though he's a starter, he'll probably get a lot of snaps. I want to see Jarek Reed in the last year of his rookie deal, or the third year of his rookie deal. Yeah. If he's, second year removed from that ACL injury now, if he can make a statement, I want to see if Shaq Griffin has anything left in the tank. I want to see if Josh Jobe can take a step forward from last year. I want to see Nathaniel Pritchett or Nehemiah Pritchett. But why do I keep wanting to call him Nathaniel Pritchett? I do that all the time. But Nehemiah Pritchett, I want to see if he looks like a potential future starter, right? I want to see a lot of Jared Ivey and Connor O'Toole, those young edge players. And then on offense, I think we're going to see more reps from starters and players that figure to play key roles because the learning curve, and there was just so much more work done on that side of the line this offseason. Those guys need as many reps as they can get. So I think you're going to see more reps than we're used to from the top 5, 6, 7 offensive linemen. The receiver rotation is going to be fascinating to watch, the tight end rotation. And then I think just Jalen Milroe, and hopefully they give him enough snaps. I think, I've said it, I think this could be one of the most fun preseasons we've had in a long time, and largely because of what Milroe might be able to do. If they kind of take the leash off of him a little bit and tell him that he can run around if he wants to and not be careful. John's bringing me back to my old bartending days. What's in a Bahama Mama? I cannot remember. Hurricane's basically a Long Island iced tea, but with a couple of tweaks to it. Am I right? I think it has a float of 151 instead of just the dark rum. Or am I thinking? No, I'm thinking Mai Tai. Sorry. Hurricane is a takeoff on a Mai Tai, but as opposed to like the floated dark rum on the top, you do 151, right? Am I right? Let me know if I'm right. Award-winning bartender here, but it's been a minute since I've bartended. See? Dogzilla's drinking Blue Moon too. Pleasantly surprised. Belgian style, like more normal Stella. I don't know what it is, because I'll drink Shock Top from time to time too. It's usually a little cheaper than Blue Moon. Sometimes it's available and Blue Moon's not. I can't put my finger on it. I don't know really what the difference is. There's just something about Blue Moon that I just think flavors it's just really drinkable. I just really enjoy it. And yeah, you're a Stella guy. We talked about that last night. John says, can't wait to watch Murphy take the next step and become a truly unstoppable nightmare for opposing offenses to rack up some serious sack numbers. I'll put my neck out. I think at some point, okay, I'll make a bold prediction. We'll do a bold prediction show before we get to the regular season, but Byron Murphy is going to have a 10-sack season during his rookie deal. Now, that might include the fifth-year option. But sometime during his rookie contract, he's going to have a 10-sack year. I just think the ability's there, and as that defense gets more cohesion, there's been some indications this year, including things Mike McDonald has said, that he's going to feel a little more comfortable this year getting aggressive, using more of those exotic kind of simulated pressures, more blitzes, because there's so much continuity on this defense, right? All 11 starters back, 15 players who started a game last year. The learning curve is going to be a lot less steep, and so he's going to be able to turn those guys loose a little bit this year. That's going to be cool to see. Let's see. Yeah, so great point by Noax Woodstock. Yeah, I love the idea of signing our young core early. Why not? It takes two to tango. These players have to be willing to sign too, and their representatives. And all of those players that I listed there, Cross, Bryant, Mafe, Walker, Reek, and to some extent, Lucas. Like, honestly, if the Seahawks are interested in signing Lucas to an extension, he might be more willing to take one than the rest of these guys because he's had to experience not knowing if your career is going to be able to continue, not knowing what's going on with your body, having to fight through basically 2 years, 1 year figuring out what the hell's wrong with his knee, and the second year fixing it and rehabbing from it. If the Seahawks are interested in approaching him about a deal, which I'd be surprised by at this point, he might be more willing. But some of these other players, we hear the term all the time, like bet on yourself. They all might feel like they're in that boat a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, Dogzilla says Cross has to be a priority, even if he's mid-level. Absolutely. And that might be all he is. He doesn't quite have the physical ability to just dominate people physically in the run game. That's just not who he is, even though the reports during OTAs and minicamp where he added some weight, maybe 10, 15 pounds, might be up to like 315, which would help a lot. But, run blocking isn't just about weight. It's about mentality and mindset and everything else. But if he just becomes a guy that takes another step and he becomes like a near elite pass protector and an adequate run blocker, just a really good solid player that maybe makes a Pro Bowl once in a while, but never is mentioned in those conversations about like top 5 left tackles in the league, that's fine. There's tremendous value in having a 24-year-old left tackle who's top 10 to 15 in the league. Tremendous value. And that's something you want to lock down, especially given the Seahawks history on the offensive line. Like, just get it done. We got to keep these guys. Have to. Absolutely have to. And I'm, in some respects, I'm ambivalent when it comes to Lucas because we have to see a healthy season. We have to see that, like, yeah, he's back. But man, if he is, I want to keep him around. I really do. You probably get a discount because of the injury history, even if he's fully healthy, even if all the scans come out and look perfect. That history's going to discount his value, even on the open market. If they let him go, Seahawks have a history of doing this, right? Like, go test free agency. Here's what we're willing to pay you. Come back to us if you want to be here. He's not going to find, like, there isn't a team that's going to be like, hey, we're giving you top 5 money. Not with that knee. Not with that history, even if he plays 17 games this year. So, but he's a guy that, like, right tackles are kind of quote unquote easier to find. But they've also drafted a bunch of dudes too, right? And Michael Jarrell, Mason Richmond, that they're really high on. They signed Josh Jones. He's still just 27, 28 years old. So I guess you just put that in the pile of reasons to not extend Lucas early. Because A, we want to see him play 17 games. And B, like, we feel good about Mason Richmond. He was a guy John Benton pounded the table for, right? Feel good about Mike Jarrell. We took him last year out of D2. Maybe one of those guys is ready to be a right tackle in 2026 on a rookie deal. So, let's see. Yeah, I mean, there's so many examples. Christian Wilkins. Trying to remember all these dudes new. Quinnen Williams, Christian Wilkins, Jalen Carter. There's these highly touted, highly drafted top 10, top 15 nose tackles and interior defensive tackles that come from like SEC schools. They don't hit the ground running. They don't dominate right away because they're playing with the big boys and they're not quite physically developed themselves. It's just a whole different game than in college, for sure. So that's another great example. I mean, now, Carter looks like this might be the year that he becomes that dude where he's getting all pro votes, right? Again, this is a complicated, nuanced argument, right? MWM says, problem with Woolen is the Hawks can't afford to lose him. They had a chance to draft a good cornerback in the draft, but they didn't, so the only option is bargain shopping or overpaying another cornerback. That's not necessarily true. I wouldn't agree with that completely. I don't know what the 2026 cornerback draft class looks like, how deep it is. They do, though, because they've already started work on it. But this last year was a very uninspiring corner class. And if you didn't take one in the first 2 rounds, you probably weren't going to get one that really looks like he could develop into much more than Riq Woolen. And while I think corner was probably, well, I know it is. I know it was on their radar. I know it was something discussed heavily because one of the first things John Schneider said at the end of the draft was, yeah, we didn't address that. We need to find some guys. But I think by choosing to take a quarterback at 91 or 92, that would have been the sweet spot. I'd have to go back and look at the draft list, see guys that were left. But by doing that, there's an opportunity cost. It's kind of a luxury pick to take a guy you think might develop into your franchise quarterback, but it's going to be third on your depth chart for the next year or two. It costs you the opportunity to maybe take a corner that could have contributed or that you could see starter potential in. So it just, that's kind of the one, that and nose tackle are the two things they didn't come out of this draft with that I wish they would have. Yeah, Carter he got sacks as a rookie, but his snap count wasn't very high. Like they rotated him heavily. He just wasn't ready for a full-time gig yet, and many of these guys aren't. Okay. Hey. Good day, mate. How you doing, Shane? Good to see you from down under. Always good to see you. Would love to see Murphy play some edge, John says. That'd be fun. Like, we know how much McDonald likes to move guys around, right? Lou Hayes said, can't Reed play more nose and Murphy less? Of course. But Reed's not a true nose tackle either. He's really not. He can do it. And I've said this for a while now. Like, in this defense, as much as they would like to have a true nose tackle, most snaps, they don't need one. They just need guys that can do nose tackle stuff from time to time. Reed's one of those guys. It's a rotation. I think they both had similar snap counts when it came to the nose tackle position last year. MWM says Zabel will probably have a good career, but he's still a rookie. Will more than likely have rookie growing pains. Of course. Absolutely. All right, let's have some fun. B251 says, sup, Dan? How's it going? Siobhan Ravel was a guy that I thought fit everything they were looking at. And with the depth, with some of the guys they have in their secondary, like they could have afforded to let him get healthy and develop. But yeah, when he kept falling, I thought, man, he's gonna fall right into their lap. And they had some other choices that they made, right? They went Eminwari and they went Arroyo instead. But yeah, Ravel is a guy that I really, really liked. Where'd he end up? Dallas? All right, let's have some fun. So we talked about music last night, and some of these off-season things we've gone off script a little bit. We've talked about some non-sports stuff. We talked about sports movies. I guess that's sports. We talked about potato chips. We talked about some food takes and stuff like that. But last night we got into a conversation about bands, and it got me thinking today about my favorite bands and how I would rank them. And I thought it would be a top 5 list, but as I'm driving around thinking about this, I'm like, I can't do 5 because I'd be leaving this band out. So I did it. And I came up with a list of my favorite bands. And I'm not going to like be all dramatic and go 10-1 or whatever. I'm just going to throw it up there. So here it is. Let me do this. First of all, I'll get that out of the way. So these are my top 10 bands. Let's go 10-1, right? From the lower right up to the upper number 1. You see some variety here, right? Like obviously I'm a rock guy. Although growing up, like pop music dominated everything because everything was included in pop. Now pop is a very specific genre, right? But pop used to actually literally mean popular and not just, now it's the genre of pop, which is R&B based and a lot of heavy production and you can dance to it. It wasn't the case. Everything qualified to be pop music when I was growing up in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. So you got a lot of variety. And so I think that's where some of this comes from. But start at number 10, 3 Days Grace. This is a band that's kind of come back on my radar recently. They have done in an era when bands break up and reform and they have new members and some fans reject bands because it's not the same singer anymore or what have you. I think 3 Days Grace cracked the code. So 10 years ago or so, they decided to part ways with Adam Grantier, and he went and did a solo thing, and he did Saint Asonia, and he broke off on his own, and they continued with Matt Walsh, I think is his name, and that was an easy transition for them because he's the brother of, I think, the guitar player in that band. He was also singing with, is it A Day to Remember? I actually saw them open for 3 Days Grace once. So it was an easy switch, right? And it actually worked. Like I enjoyed Saint Asonia. I went and saw him live a couple times. So I got to see Adam Grantier doing that thing. And they would always work in some 3 Days Grace songs. And I liked the new material that the 3 Days Grace was doing with Matt Walsh. Well, then they decided there was sort of some movement a year or two ago to reunite. Sort of what we saw from Creed, and I'll get to them in a minute. You might be surprised to see them not on my list. But it's like we all get along. We all like each other. We've known each other for decades. Let's do a reunion. And this is what they tried to do with Van Halen, and they could never get all the parties to agree to it. Sammy even recommended that Van Halen go on the road for a reunion tour at some point with Dave and Sammy, and they just sing their own songs. That's what's happening now with 3 Days Grace. They're back together. They have a new record coming out next month. They have 3 new singles off of it where they alternate vocals. But this way they can go out and you can watch them do their whole catalog. They can do the Matt Walsh stuff. They can do the Adam Grantier stuff. And then they can work together. They both play guitar. It's genius. And the new material is really good. So that's why they're on this list, because they kind of did that. Creed is not on this list only because they're 10.5. Like, love Creed. They were in Lexington the other day. I wish I could have gone to see him, but I'm going to see him for the first time in my life. Finally, I told the story last night. I'm not going to tell it again. But I get to see him next month when I'm back home. Might even see him 2 nights in a row. Might drive down to Ridgefield and see him the next night. Revere them, but they kind of got knocked off, and we'll talk about that in another minute. Matchbox 20, a band that I just absolutely love. Love their whole catalog. Got to see them live for the first time a couple years ago after they had taken some time off, and they were phenomenal. Just the musicianship is incredible. Love their catalog. Big fan. Number 8, y'all might be going, who the fuck is that? So I have discovered in the last 7 or 8 years that in Europe, the late 80s and early 90s still exist to this day. There are bands, young bands in their prime doing that genre, doing melodic hard rock, the hair band kind of music, and doing it really well. Like, rock is still popular in Europe. Some of these bands that play to small clubs, like 2,500 seat theaters and clubs here in the States, will go to Europe and they'll play 20,000 seat arenas because it's still just a popular genre over there. Heat's one of them. They're from Sweden. And in particular, they had a 4-album stretch with a singer named Eric Gronwald. That name may or may not ring a bell to some of you. He was part of Skid Row last year. Stepped away from them because the touring schedule was so hard. He's a guy that's had to beat leukemia in his lifetime. But he's just an unbelievable dynamic singer, incredible range, one of the great rock singers of all time, in my opinion. But they also know how to write really hooky, catchy songs that are hard, that are heavy. They've got power ballads mixed in. They would have fit right in to that genre back when they were doing hair metal. So if you like that kind of stuff, check out Heat and the middle 4 albums with Eric Gronwald. Oh, there's Creed at number 7. I forgot my own list. Again, super excited to see them. Can't wait. Great comeback story, right? They broke up for the right reasons because Scott Stapp was a mess. Drug addiction, vocal issues caused by the drug addiction, and not just like hard recreational drugs, but like was addicted to steroids, was overusing those to try and fix the voice. It becomes a whole cycle. And then he had the whole, if you guys remember, oh my God, remember when he was on the watch list for the CIA for a while? He was like making phone calls and because he was off his meds and he found out he was bipolar, I think, right? Looked like his career was over and you were just hoping he could get his life together as a human being. And then he did. And I actually saw him at the Triple Door on a solo tour at the end of 2019, right before COVID hit. And I remember thinking then, I was in the front row, healthier than he's ever been, looked great, sounded amazing, sounded better than he did in his heyday with Creed. And I thought then, and I think I probably started talking about it on Twitter, they're going to reunite someday. It's going to make too much sense and the money's going to be there for them. That's what's happening. They're sounding amazing, and I can't wait to see them. Number 6. Number 6 is near and dear to my heart for a couple of reasons. I think they're the most underrated band from that genre because of Janie Lane's talent, his ability as a singer, and his ability as a songwriter. Even after grunge came in and wiped out the genre, they still put out some great records. Dog Eat Dog was at the end of that when like Nirvana had kind of come in and took a sledgehammer to hair metal. Phenomenal record. But even a couple of the Ultraphobic, Belly to Belly, Janie was a talent that just struggled with alcoholism and it really kind of short-circuited some of the band's progress. But I got an ability, I had the opportunity in 95 and 96 when I was in Bismarck, North Dakota, working in sports to see them on a very small scale. 95, 96, that's when that genre was dead now. And so instead of playing arenas, bands like that were playing tiny clubs. And they were booked to play a club called Eddie's Club that was so small, it wasn't even in Bismarck. It was in Mandan, North Dakota, which is a suburb of Bismarck. It was a tiny little club that during the week was a strip club, and on the weekends they would have live music. And I found out they were coming. They had a new record out, and I went to my news director and I said, hey, I know I do sports, but there's a band coming that's had like top 10 singles. They were massive on MTV. They were a huge deal. They're playing our town. Can I do a story on them? And he allowed it. Got a hold of their publicist. They sent me an advance copy of the record. Got to meet with the band before the show and interview them. It was phenomenal. They were great. Eric Turner, Jerry Dixon, they were phenomenal guys. Everyone was there except Janie. So then I got to see the show from like this far away. It's unbelievable. To this day, I still prefer smaller shows. Some of the bands on this list, like they play clubs. So I get to see them in smaller venues. It was unbelievable. They were incredible. It was, I wish I could have taped it. Like I wish they had cell phones then like they do now, and I would still have that memory. So afterwards, small club, and they're like, we're coming out there to hang out with you guys. And Jerry and Eric and Joey Lane, they're all playing like blackjack. And at one point, Eric and Jerry come over to me and they go, hey, Dan, Janie wants to talk to you. So they send me over into like this corner, and 6 hours later, I'm still just huddled up one-on-one with Janie Lane. He was a huge sports fan. It's kind of funny being in this area of the country now. I think he's from Indiana or Ohio. He was a huge Ohio State Buckeyes fan. The Seahawks had just drafted Joey Galloway. So we had a lot to talk about. He was introducing me to all these drinks I'd never had. I got super hammered. And then this is my rock star moment, okay? 2 a.m. hits, and bouncer comes over and goes, hey, bro, you got to go. And Janie Lane goes, no, this dude's with me. So I got to hang out till like 5 a.m. with those guys. I was married at the time. There were no cell phones. And, well, there were, but we didn't have them. And so I got home in like the crack of dawn, and my wife was pissed. Where the fuck were you? And I was pretty hammered at the time. Didn't drive home, by the way. Took a cab. And I just said, I just spent the night hanging out with Warrant, getting to know Janie Lane, and I don't give a fuck. And I went to bed and I went to sleep. 6 months later, they came through again and played a summer show on the back of a flatbed truck. They remembered me. They invited me, gave me all access. Buddy and I used our equipment from the TV station, and we taped the entire show. So somewhere in Bismarck, North Dakota, an old coworker of mine, probably on half-inch tape, has that show. We plugged into the soundboard and everything. Different story, though. Whereas the first time, like, Janie was lucid and dynamic and incredible. This one, he was struggling. Every musical break between songs, guitar solo, whatever, he'd go backstage. I could see him, head in his hands, like really struggling. Didn't get a chance to talk to him then, talk to the other guys. But rest in peace, Janie. Glad I got to know him, and I just love their material. At least once a year, I have a playlist of all my favorite Warrant songs, and I go through and dig into that for about a month at a time. So number 5, Kiss. First band I ever saw live, 1978, 79, saw him live. Talked about this with Bob Condotta when he was on the show a couple of years ago. We were at the same show. He's a big Kiss fan. That was, that kind of got started for me. Like Christmas, my older sister was given an album, was given Kiss Destroyer in 1978, whatever. And she opened it up and she was that iconic painted album cover. And she goes, I don't want this. And I was like, that looks cool. I'll take it. That was the beginning of me liking rock music. From there, I got into Rush a little bit, and it kind of took off from there. But seeing them, those being my first 2 big shows, just kind of set the stage. And I saw hundreds of concerts after that because I just loved the live experience. My 3rd show, this is how lucky I was at the time. Also 79 or 80, maybe it was 81. I got to see Queen on the Game tour with Freddie Mercury. So yeah, I have that. And then I got to see Kiss a month before they called it quits a couple of months ago, or a couple of years ago when they played Seattle for the last time. Was concerned about going, almost didn't go because I knew Paul Stanley had been having some vocal issues, but he was good enough that night. It was phenomenal. I'm glad I went. Number 4, Def Leppard. I think that I've seen them as many, maybe more than anyone else. I'd have to really do the tally. I've seen them live like 7 or 8 times. I think that's as much as anyone. They're still out doing it 40 years later, almost as well as they ever have. Like, they've kept in shape and vocally and physically and everything else. And they've even put out some new material over the last few years. It's pretty decent. They put on a great show. One of the best catalogs of that genre, bar none. Incredible musicianship. And they really changed the way rock bands produced their sound in the studio. Number 3, Bon Jovi, the best catalog of any of those bands. Even some of the stuff they did much later in their career. Like, the last couple albums have been crap. John can't sing anymore. He has to write to his current range. It's more country oriented. But up even until the Circle album, which is, I think, 2013 or 14, that was the last time I got to see him in Seattle. Great stuff. And just their writing ability, he and Richie Sambora, they're in the Songwriter Hall of Fame. People forget because it's so, recency bias, right? With the struggles that John's had vocally. He was amazing during his prime. There's a 20-year run there where he was an incredibly dynamic vocalist live, and he was an incredible frontman. And that band was unbelievable live. Like, the energy and the musicianship, and again, just the catalog. Like, they're one of those bands that if he could still sing like he used to be able to, and they went on a tour right now, they'd have to be 3.5-hour shows. They'd be like Springsteen shows to get all their good songs in. Also, fun fact, he's not the only one that's lost his voice. Back in the day, and I had a similar tone. I was able to sing the entire Bon Jovi catalog in key, in tune. That was my karaoke go-to. I actually had musicians at one time. This recording artist came up to me and he was like, "Hey, we're in the studio and I'm thinking about doing a cover of Wanted Dead or Alive. Do you want to come see?" Like, it never happened, but like that, I used to be able to do that. It was a point of pride for me, and I used to love doing it. And I can't anymore. It's just gone. Like, the upper register, gone. Can't do it. It's sad. It's really sad. So I can even imagine what it's like for him and these other singers that lose their voice. Like, how much that has to break their heart and just eat away. at their psyche. Like, yeah, they're amazing. Number 2, Alter Bridge. If you've never heard of them, and you like any of these other bands, you need to check them out. They're like 8 or 9 albums into this now. They just started recording their newest album. Mark Tremonti sent out a picture from the studio today. So this is what became of Creed after Scott Stapp went off the rails. So back in 2003 was the first time I ever saw him live. So Creed basically reformed with a new singer. So it was the same guitar player, drummer, bass player, and Mark Tremonti, Scott Phillips, Brian Marshall. They went out and got a new singer. Singer's actually from Spokane, Washington. His name's Miles Kennedy. You might have heard of him. He also sings with Slash's band. He was also, quick little piece of trivia, he was the singer at the end of the movie Rockstar that took over for Mark Wahlberg in the same way that Wahlberg did for the previous singer at the beginning of the show. I've seen these guys a ton live, met them a bunch of times. The first album was written before they added Miles, so it sounded like a Creed record, but with a guy that had a 5-octave range. Like Miles Kennedy is just flat out one of the best vocalists on the planet. Amazing. And he can play guitar, which funnily enough, is that a word? I'm using it. Mark Tremonti didn't even really know how good of a guitar player Miles was. Their whole first tour together. Then they're getting ready. They're in pre-production for their second record, Blackbird, which really broke them. It's a flawless album from start to finish. In fact, there's a song on there called Blackbird that has been voted many times by like Guitar Magazine as the greatest guitar solo of all time. It's a dual solo with the two of them. And he just heard Miles. He heard this guitar sound coming from a closet under the stairs in their studio. At one point, he's like, what the hell? And he opens the door and it's Miles and they're just shredding. He's like, I didn't know you could do that. So they play off each other really well, even though Tremonti's phenomenal in his own right. Just a great, great band. And while they're not dynamic live, they just kind of stand there and play. Maybe the best live group in that entire genre. Just 100% live. They don't use any tracks, no auto-tune, none of that shit. They're phenomenal. And then number 1, after seeing all those other bands, you might be surprised by this, but it's always been Journey for me. It's always been Steve Perry for me. I just think they're the most talented musical group I've ever come across. I like their old stuff, like pre-pop, when it was Greg Raleigh and Steve Perry kind of trading off on vocals. I like when they got into more of their rock era with Frontiers, and then even their later stuff when they broke up and got back together again. I love Steve Perry's solo stuff. When Steve Perry, I mentioned this last night, but when he passes away someday, I'm gonna need a week. I won't do a show. I won't go to work if there's work. Like I'll need to check out for a little bit. That'll be the one for me. Like just an unbelievable talent. And in my opinion, the greatest male vocalist of all time. And I also believe Neil Schon is one of the greatest guitar players of all time. Steve Smith, one of the great drummers of all time. Jonathan Cain, one of the great songwriters and keyboardists of all time. Journeys, that's the group. Like if Christine wasn't coming with me on the drive back to Seattle next week, which for a little bit it looked like I was going to make it myself, probably would have played the entire Journey catalog at least once on that drive. So I got a little rambling there, but yeah, that's my right there. I don't think I forgot anyone. MWM, Queen absolutely stole the show with one of the great live performances at Live Aid almost 40 years ago. Yeah. I thought they did such a great job of depicting that in that Queen movie, like almost like move for move. Yeah, getting to see, funny story about that. So my first 2 concerts, as I mentioned, were Kiss. 78, 79. 78 was the height of their, like, Kiss Alive 3 had just come out. Destroyer had been out for like a year and a half. Just all the explosions and the fire pots and the big risers and the stairs and the makeup and the blood and the fire, all that. And so my dad had to take me. I'm 13 years old, right? And then he had to take me again the next year to see him on the Dynasty tour. And I remember at one point he's looking through the binoculars and he sees it's during Gene Simmons' bass solo. And he's like, is he throwing up blood? He was so disgusted by it. And my parents were classic too. Like when I started wanting to put up posters, they did the reverse psychology thing. They're like, we'll let him do it because he'll grow out of it. It's a phase. I never grew out of it. But for the third show, Mom came with us. Can't remember why she decided to or whatever, but she came with us. So it was me, my mom, and my dad going to see Queen together. Now I'm like 15, 16. And I remember walking out, and when you're a kid, you want your parents to always accept your stuff, right? You want them to like your bands, even though you probably, from a rational standpoint, know that that's ridiculous. But I'm walking out, what'd you guys think? What'd you guys think? And my mom goes, I liked them. They were really good. And I was surprised by it. I was like, what are you talking about? Because in my head, all the bands that I like are the same, right? Why do you hate Kiss? Oh, this is hilarious. Are her ears burning? My mom just texted me. I haven't heard from her in weeks. That's funny. Oh, why'd you like them and you don't like? And she goes, because they used a piano. That was her standard. No, I'm so happy I got to see them live. Freddie Mercury was just such a dynamic talent. Unbelievable. Oh, here we go. I mean, the HHG, I'm going to piss Dan off, but I can't tell the difference between Journey and Foreigner. They sound exactly the same to me. I get it. If you called up a Journey song list on Spotify, you'd probably get a bunch of Foreigner mixed in, right? I would consider those the same genre. Like if you did that, if you went, hey, I want to listen to Journey radio on Spotify, you'd probably get Foreigner, Styx, Kansas, Boston. That's kind of what I would group in. Maybe some REO Speedwagon be mixed in there. I just think that as great as Lou Gramm was, just Steve Perry is so silky smooth. I don't think anyone compares. Like there's some Sam Cooke in there. He could sing blues. He had a staccato style that was really unique. His vocal range and how easily he did it. Like even Lou Gramm in his prime, he looked like he was having an aneurysm hitting high notes. It's just, you hear about like high effort pitchers. They have a high effort wind up and other guys are really smooth. Steve Perry was the smooth guy. Like he just made it look so easy. Journey live in Houston, 1981. You can find it on Prime, whatever. To me, I've always said this about them, that particular night, and it was broadcast live on MTV at the time, but it remains out there. You can stream it. It's literally the night of the prime of their career. That was the best night they've ever had. Like, if you could put it all together, right? Like in an athlete's, the analogy would be like, that was your greatest game ever. Like you pitched a perfect game, and how easy he makes it look hitting all those notes. It's just silky smooth. If in this day and age, if you saw a performance like Steve Perry used to give on a nightly basis live, you would think it's a track. You would think it's auto-tune. You would think he's not singing 100% live, but he was. Oh, you got to meet Ace? A coolest, most chill guy. That's funny. So I have an autographed picture of Ace, and in my old, up until February, my old physical background of my show, there was a picture of him in the back. And it was because my buddy Stephen Douglas, you've heard his music on the show before, opened for Ace a couple of years ago at the Everett Theater. And he said Ace was the biggest a-hole he's ever dealt with. That he was 100% for sure drunk, even though he's been claiming sobriety for the last 20 years. And then he was selling those autographed pictures, but Steve snagged one for me. So I got one free. So it's interesting to hear that. But, guys change too, right? They get jaded as they get older or whatever. Yep, Shane knows. Shane's a musician. For him to say Miles is a brilliant singer, he understands. I'm so bummed, though, Perry. So Kiss is doing the biopic thing. It's on Netflix. They've started shooting it, or they're about to start shooting it. It's supposed to come out 2026. I was excited about it. It's just going to focus on the beginning of their career up until they make it really big, right, when Alive comes out. But the casting has started to leak out. And the first casting choice is Nick Jonas is going to play Paul Stanley. And my first reaction was like, I'm out. Like, I think with biopics, it's so hard that you kind of need to find guys that are unknown, or at least maybe they're character actors. You throw a wig on them and you don't really recognize who they are. Like I thought, even though the movie was kind of done tongue in cheek, and they went more for laughs. I actually enjoyed The Dirt, the Motley Crue biopic, and I thought the casting was pretty damn good. Like those guys all kind of looked and acted. I thought Machine Gun Kelly as Tommy Lee was absolutely brilliant casting. And even though he was a known guy, he was able to pull it off. So maybe they'll surprise us, right? There's some indication Paul Stanley's not happy about it either. So we'll see how that works out. Yeah, you have to wonder, like, if Freddie Mercury was still alive, like, what would Queen be doing? Right? They'd figure something out. Shane, good to see you. Thanks for the super thanks. Never meet your heroes, especially in music. Who's your example? Who'd you meet that disappointed you, that let you down? I have one. This is Seahawks related. So I went to a show a couple years ago and saw Nita Strauss play at El Corazon, which is just down the hill from where I lived. I like walked to the show. And if you don't know Nita, she's like super hot, blonde, female lead guitar player. She plays in Alice Cooper's band, but she also does solo stuff. She's made quite a name for herself. And this was a solo show, so I went and saw her. Well, the cool thing about Nita is she was a huge Seahawk fan, and she would always have, she's not from Seattle, she was a Seahawk fan. She would always have a big Seahawk logo sticker on the back of her guitar, and during her shows, she would like lift it up and show it off or whatever, right? Well, so I go to the meet and greet, right? I buy a shirt, I have her sign a thing, I'm chatting with her for a little bit, I get a selfie, I should have got it ready and put it up. And I said something about the Seahawks, and she gave me like the biggest resting bitch face look. And she's like, screw the Seahawks, I'm a Rams fan. Well, what I had forgotten is that she had moved to LA years ago, and now she is the game day performer for Rams games. So she sets up at the end of SoFi, and she plays during the whole game. Like she'll play coming in and out of timeouts and stuff. She'll play the Star Spangled Banner. So now she's a converted Rams fan. So that means she was never a Seahawk fan to begin with, right? That's how fandom works. So screw her. John says he's seen Kiss 5 times. You might have me beat. So I saw him 78, 79. I saw him once without makeup at Key Arena. It was like not the Hot in the Shade tour. I was supposed to see him in Pullman on the Hot in the Shade tour. I had like front row tickets. They canceled that show. They said they got snowed in on the pass the night before, but it turns out they just didn't have good ticket sales. That was during their non-makeup era where things kind of went downhill before the reunion and the big comeback. But I did see him without makeup at Key Arena once, and it was like a third full. And then saw him on the last tour. So maybe I've only seen him 4 times. I guess I have. Nope. I've seen him 5 times. I saw him again with my ex-wife, so it was like 2010 or 11. I have seen him 5 times. We're tied. It was supposed to be 6 though, but they canceled. Damn it. Let's see. What do we got? Yeah, it'll always be the original members of the makeup, of course. I mean, I've been more forgiving about lineup changes because sometimes guys just don't want to be there, right? You can't make them stick around, or sometimes guys don't deserve to be there. And it's about the songs, right? You want the life of the songs to carry on. And frankly, later in their career, like Eric Singer and Tommy Thayer were better musicians than Ace and Peter, but it just wasn't the same. It wasn't the same. Now, I will say this, during the unmasked phase, the non-makeup phase, especially before he passed away, rest in peace, when they had Eric Carr and Bruce Kulick, Eric played drums and Bruce played, that musically was their best lineup, bar none. Like the Revenge album, even Lick It Up, which Vinnie Vincent was actually the guitar player on that and helped write some of those songs. Like some of their best musicianship was represented on some of those records. Yeah, Little Warrant, shout out there. Heaven isn't so far away. Some good stuff in here, you guys. This is funny. Evanescence is a sneaky one that probably if I went to about 12, 13, 14 would be on my list. Seen him live twice. Once when she was doing like the stripped down orchestra thing, which I wasn't crazy about. Then I got to see him a couple years ago full band and phenomenal. Amy Lee's incredible. Which also reminds me, though, that also just outside the top 10 would be Hailstorm. Big Lizzie Hale fan, and actually saw her open. Well, I've seen them like 5 times, but she actually opened for Evanescence on that tour. Skid Row in their prime with Sebastian Bach was unbelievable. Those 2 records back to back, Skid Row and Slave to the Grind, maybe the best 2 records musically of that era, because they weren't into the hair metal thing. I said this last night, like they were kind of the transition band. Like they got their popularity before grunge took over. They got in just before the deadline, but they didn't do as much of the hairspray, and they didn't do spandex. They were jeans and t-shirts, kind of before jeans and t-shirts took over the whole thing. John says Journey was solid, great songs. Here's my pet peeve about Journey and how they're perceived is, and this happens with a lot of bands, okay, is you only know them, if you're a casual fan, you only know them for their hits. And the hits, while they're great from Journey, are all of the more poppy, sappy, ballady type. Not all, right? Separate Ways is a rocker. Like Daughtry's out performing it on his tour now. Like that's a rock song. But, you know, Open Arms and Who's Crying Now and all those kind of slower songs. The best part of Journey's catalog is the stuff that was never released as singles. And that's probably the case with a lot of bands, right? Bands that I don't like, probably. You could make the same argument. Well, you should go beyond the hits. Some of their best stuff is in there. Yeah. It's, I mean, I like grunge too, Dogzilla. I just like singing. That's the reason grunge never became like my favorite genre. It was something where I just kind of picked and chose what I liked. Because you go to a grunge show and there's just one microphone on the stage. There's no background vocals, no harmonies, no gang vocals. And it was just, I like range. I like clear, crisp. I like big ranges, and I like harmonies and hooks. And grunge, it was just like the one singer, with some exceptions, right? Obviously, Alice in Chains did like the dual lead thing, but that was just kind of my deal with them. Yeah, Queensryche could be just outside the top 10 as well. Jeff Tate was unbelievable. I talked about this last night, like that Take Hold of the Flame video when they did that live in Japan. Unbelievable. And a guy that I want to see live again someday. Solo. Little shout out there from John for Van Halen and AC/DC. Are you a Hagar or a David Lee Roth guy? Ooh, Scorpions, saw them live. I saw that. Some of you might not remember this, but Monsters of Rock was a tour that happened in, I want to say, 88, 89. I was in Pullman, went and saw him in Spokane. So it was Van Halen headlined, Scorpions. I think it was in this order. Van Halen, Scorpions, Dokken, Metallica, Kingdom Come. It was before the Black Album for Metallica. So it was they were not my thing then because they were just thrash metal. Then the Black Album came out and I was like, oh, they have hooks. But that show was 120 degrees. And so it was played, it was a football stadium, Joe Albee, AstroTurf and everything else. So it was like 140 coming off the turf. My eyes got windburned so bad I couldn't see anything. I had to keep going to the concession stand and getting cups of ice and putting it on my eyes. Finally, the sun started going down so I could kind of see. I was able to listen, obviously, so I could enjoy Dokken, who I really liked back then too. I could see a little bit of the Scorpions, and then I was able to watch Van Halen because it was dark and my eyes started feeling better. I go right down the middle. I like both versions of Van Halen. I don't think you have to pick. Absolutely love the Sammy Hagar stuff, but also appreciate the David Lee Roth stuff for what it was because it's some of the great rock of all time. And it's too bad they couldn't have figured out the 3 Days Grace thing. Imagine how great of a tour that would have been if they could have gotten their shit together and gotten on the same page and had David Lee Roth and Sammy both out doing their material. That would have been incredible. Unbelievable. Let's see. Yeah, John says, Hailstorm, that girl can sing. Yeah, she has quite the range. Yeah, Honey Pit says, try singing Foreigner. Good luck with that. Yeah, man, when he was good, he was good. And I'm glad to see that he's bounced back to the point that he's actually touring with Foreigner again this year. He's not going to sing full time with them, but he's going to pick and choose his songs. He's been able to bounce back. I have a story about Foreigner. So I went and saw them open for Journey in 97 or 8 in Boise. And it was Journey with Steve Augeri. He was the first singer that replaced Steve Perry. And he was really good for a couple of years. He did a couple albums. I saw him twice on tour. They were outstanding with him. And then he literally blew his vocal cords out trying to sing that catalog every night. It's not for the weak. But Foreigner was in a interesting phase at that time. Lou Gramm was still full-time part of the band, but he had a brain tumor. He had recently undergone brain surgery, and it all the radiation, chemo, and everything else sapped his range. And so it was really unfortunate. I wish I could have seen him in his prime, because what would happen is, and it made me look at their catalog in a different way, because if you go pick any big Foreigner song, it all starts out the same way, where he's starting out down at the low part of his range. He's got that growly, kind of sultry, like warm Lou Gramm. And you're like, okay, this sounds great. And the hooks, like the riffs for all their big hits. So they'd launch into a song and the whole crowd's going crazy. And they're like, oh, it feels like the first time. And he starts off low, and then he goes and every song goes like this. And eventually he jumps up an octave or two and tries to hit the high notes. And it was so bad. So embarrassingly bad. Imagine 18,000 people in an amphitheater, quiet as a mouse, looking at each other like, does he know? Does he know how bad he sounds? It was really, really rough. I felt bad for him, but it was hard to watch too. And then at the end, they get together and they're saying goodnight and everything. And they're like, hey, just to let you know too, we're getting back in the studio. We're going to make a new record. And everyone just went, we don't want that. But now he actually has brought it back. I've actually kind of been going down some rabbit holes the last few days with singers that lost their voices and have brought them back. And part of the reason I went in the rabbit hole is I've been listening to Slaughter quite a bit in the last couple of weeks. And Mark Slaughter lost his voice. And he was a guy that I got to meet and see up close. I think I mentioned that already. Sorry. And he couldn't sing anymore. He sounded terrible. Well, they identified it. In his case, it was like he had an issue with his salivary glands, and he had to have some procedures done or whatever. And he's certainly not back to what he used to be. None of those guys are ever going to be. Like, the songs they wrote and performed in the studio back then, they never gave thought to 30 years from now, am I going to be able to sing this 3-4 times a week? Yeah, no, they didn't care. They just do another take until they got it right. But he's been able to bounce back to the point they're still touring, and he sounds pretty good. Tom Kiefer's another one where he had a vocal cord basically go dead. He had nerve damage and he couldn't sing. And this is during their the high, Long Cold Winter, that part of their career. He had to shut it down for 10 years. And then I just watched an interview last night actually where he had to A, do a bunch of physical therapy, but also B, do a bunch of mental therapy and retrain himself how to sing. Now he's out there and he's able to sing pretty close to what he used to. So it's cool to see guys bounce back from that, because usually once you lose it, you lose it. I don't have any hope that John Bon Jovi's going to be able to tour again. It's well known he had the surgery with the plastic vocal cord put in or whatever, and he's able to do these little club shows for private gatherings, but there's no way. It would just be bad. But I feel bad for those guys. But yeah, Lou Gramm in his prime was amazing. Yeah, John says, between Diamond Dave and Sammy, both are good, but Dave's vocals are iconic. They were just so different, right? He almost sang in sort of a talky kind of a way, right? Whereas Sam clearly was a singer and a guy that in his 70s now can still sing almost as well as he used to be able to. MWM says, Dan, what's the best concert you've seen all time? Mine's either Eagles or Heart. That's so hard. Because the memory is such a fickle thing. Probably some of the best shows I ever saw were when I was younger, but the memory's not as sharp. Pretty hard to beat Def Leppard on the Hysteria tour. When they broke big and they sold, 40 million albums and they were in the round and they were the biggest thing on the planet, and they came to Pullman and I got to see them there. And they were unbelievable. That was probably one. If I had to pick one, I talked about this last night, maybe the Bon Jovi New Jersey tour, about the same time period, 88, 89. Skid Row opened. They played Tacoma Dome. They had the catwalk back then. The catalog was amazing. John was in his prime. They were incredible live. They played for 2+ hours. They shot the video that night for Lay Your Hands on Me. And so I'm technically in a video, right? That might be it. Because none of the Journey concerts stand out over the rest of them. I did get to see him 4 times with Steve Perry, and one of them on the Frontiers tour, I got really close to the stage, so that would have to be up there too. But it's hard. I've seen so many good shows. It's really hard to just pick one. Yeah, we talked about this last night a little bit, HHG, the Ozzy Osbourne thing. I absolutely love how they did that. Tom Morello is the one that was a musical director and put that whole show together. Thought it was such a great mix of old and new, paying homage to the band, and then, a lot of all-stars, and then him coming out singing a few songs for the last time ever, even though he was in his chair. He's fighting Parkinson's. He's not able to stand. So he's in that really cool, goth throne, almost a Game of Thrones kind of throne. And I was shocked how good he sounded. And you could tell it was 100% live. I was surprised. Would not have surprised me or even pissed me off or disappointed me if he lip synced, given his health issues. But I thought he was phenomenal. It was great to see Jake E. Lee out there again on stage. He's been kind of a recluse. Shane's got an interesting story here. Had a whooping cough vaccine that paralyzed my right vocal cord. It never repaired, but I'm always working to keep it going. Very lucky to still be singing. I think it's something that we take for granted, that how hard it is for these guys. Steven Tyler's another one. They were going out on their farewell tour, and then he had that injury, literally injured his vocal cord, had a bunch of opinions, decided he was never going to be able to fix it to the point that they could go out and do 2.5-hour shows again, so they shut it down. So we're done. Sorry. But he went out there in the Aussie thing and sang 2 or 3 songs and sounded as good as he's sounded in the last 20 years. So now there's talk where it's maybe if they just do a show a week or 2 a week, maybe they can make it work. I was really happy to see that because he's pushing 70 now, isn't he? And he still sounded phenomenal. Some people's bodies just hold up better than others, right? Some people can still scream, just sing whatever they want to sing for as long as they want to sing it, and others can't. And it's a shame. Because we want to connect with the music. We want to connect with those songs. And it's just kind of hard. Scott Wallace says, keep waxing on the music, loving it, but can't help thinking John has to be laser focused on every practice. So much riding on his decisions of who to sign and when. I think this is, I think John Schneider is taking some time off right now. This is probably the only time of the year where he gets to disconnect a little bit. But thanks for humoring me on the music talk, you guys. It's fun. It's fun. Some of you guys don't like my list. That's fine. I've always said this, people like to get mad online these days. And they like to get really mad about things like sports, music, and comedy. You've all seen it, right? You're scrolling Instagram or TikTok and a stand-up comedy bit comes up. It's all over my timeline because I love stand-up comedy. We could have a show where we talk about favorite stand-up comics too. Maybe I'll do that next. And without fail, if you go to the comments, anytime a music video or a comedy video is posted, and you'll see, that sucks. He's terrible. She's terrible. That's horrible. No talent. Is there a more subjective thing on the world, in the world, than music or comedy? It's art. No one's ever going to agree as a consensus, ever. There's never going to be a comedian or a musician that universally everyone goes, man, that guy's brilliant. That's art. It's subjective. And so, I've never, Well, I won't say never. I'm sure I've been judgy before too. Like I sound like the old man on the porch, right? But like get off my lawn. Like some of the crap passing for live music these days pisses me off. It does. They're not singing live. They're singing over tracks, even though they're like 23 years old and singing stuff that's easy to sing, right? We're here talking about 60-year-old guys out there fucking belting 4-octave stuff and singing over electric guitars at 110 decibels and how hard that is. And they're doing it 100% live. Like we mentioned Lizzie Hale earlier, go watch some Hailstorm live stuff. Like degree of difficulty 10 plus, 100% live. Good or bad. You have an off night, fine. But these Sabrina Carpenters of the world that just, the stuff's easy to sing and yet they're not singing it live, that pisses me off. But you know what? There's 20,000 people in the arena and they're having a great time and they're loving it. That's their passion. That's what makes them happy. That's what music is. I don't like it all. I don't agree with it, but I understand that people like different things. Yeah. Yeah, it is. And what's disappointing is I remember 15, 20 years ago, it was a big deal in the Seattle area. They actually passed a law in the state of Washington that you couldn't lip sync in a live performance or you would owe refunds to all the attendees. And it was all because of a Britney Spears concert that happened at the Tacoma Dome. I don't know what happened to that. Maybe it's that it's not 100% lip syncing that they sing sometimes, but there's a track playing the whole time so they can pick and choose their moments. I just hate that. Like it's just so, there's a, what's the word I'm looking for? It's just not genuine. It's just, there's an integrity. That's the word, integrity. Like if you're Sabrina Carpenter and you can't sing those songs that she's known for, you should be able to sing those songs 7 nights a week. It's not going to strain your vocal cords, right? Why would you lip sync? Like I get it if you're an entertainer that dances a lot. Like then I kind of understood having a safety net. I still don't like it. I even got pissed. I saw Shinedown a few years ago and the vocals are always 100% live. Like Brent Smith sings 100% live and he kills it. But I'm standing there and the song Sounds of Madness. You can tell the sound of madness. I've got a book on pain. And there's that signature riff that the intro, the song starts on, right? Down, now, now. They only have one guitar player on stage. And so you would think that I would forgive a band like that for using some filler tracks, right? I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this, Shane. Like have the rhythm guitar, right? Because you don't want to pay in this day and age. It's a little harder to make money on the road unless you're a big band. Maybe the rhythm guitar part is on a track or a keyboard part. I get it. But no, the signature riff was on a track. I'm standing right there in front of the PA. I can hear it. And I can see that the guitar player is playing the rhythm part. That ticked me off. It didn't ruin the show for me or anything because like I said, everything else, they were playing their instruments live. Brent Smith was really singing live. It's just, I don't want to hear the signature riff come out of a speaker from a tape. Oh yeah, don't even get me started on Motley Crue. They would have been on this list 15 years ago. I've seen them 8 or 9 times live. One of my favorite, I told the story last night about how I had the backstage pass during the Dr. Feelgood tour. Just unbelievable what Tommy Lee did. And even though Vince was never like, was never going to challenge Steve Perry for like greatest vocalist on the planet. Like he could do his thing. The last 15 years has been so bad. When they signed their cessation of touring deal, I thought good. And then when they tore it up and came back again, I just shook my head. Like I would never go see that show. They toured with Def Leppard 2 years ago and I refused to go see it, and Poison, right? And I refused to go see it because I didn't want to pay money and then not stick around for the main band because they're so bad. Like, and don't lie about it. That's the thing. They lie about it. There's times where they're caught on camera, Nikki Sixx not playing the bass, Vince like mumbling his way through lyrics, or there's been a couple times where they've been caught and you could tell he's obviously lip syncing. Don't lie about it. All right. Yeah, this is great, Brian. Daughtry, he means Daughtry and Lizzie Hale doing separate ways is pretty awesome. Yeah, and now Daughtry's out on the road opening for Creed right now, doing it in his it's in his set list. Was it looping? No, it was recorded. Yeah. The looping would have been cool. Okay. All right, you guys. Any final, let's do a last call here. Any final Seahawk? Oh, here we go. Need to listen to some Aussie pub rock. Hey, if I can ever get down there, I'll tell you what. If the Seahawks end up playing a game in Australia, maybe 2026, 2027, if I'm credentialed, I'm going, dude. Okay, might need a place to stay because the flight alone will probably kill me financially. All right, where was I? If you guys have any last second, this is an interesting take. OFG dude says Theater of Pain was Motley Crue's best album. Most people would think the exact opposite, that it was their worst album, not including let's not talk about Generation Swine and some of that crap that came later. But of their 4 or 5 albums during their biggest run, most would agree that that's their worst album, including the band. The band members hate that record. That's an interesting take. But again, subjective, right? There's some of the material I love the best from some of the bands I love the best are albums that other people really don't appreciate. Which, little side note, if any of you do or did do the comedy one. I'll do that next. Slaughter, if you appreciated Slaughter, I just kind of what got me to go back down into their catalog again recently when I'm at the gym is I found a solo record that Mark Slaughter did in 2017 called Halfway There. And I was like, I'll give it a try. Usually these records that are done 15 years after a band's prime are crap. They've just lost the touch for writing to their audience or whatever. But if you liked Slaughter back in the day, go to Spotify, Apple Music, whatever, and check out that album Halfway There. It's really good. Excuse me. And he plays everything on it. He plays 90%. It's like Wolf Van Halen's out there doing now. He played bass, drums, guitar. He was always a good guitar player. A lot of people don't know that. It's great. And his voice sounds great on it. There's some cool mid-tempo stuff, some cool ballads, some cool rockers. Check it out. If you liked Slaughter back in the day, definitely check it out. Too Fast for Love was so fun because it sounded like it was recorded in a garage. It's such a bare bones, stripped down, minimalistic production. But I think it's what makes it so great. The songs on that record are so good too. And it was even admittedly back then, they weren't masters of their instruments yet, but they knew how to write songs. And that was mostly Nikki Sixx. He knew, man. All right, guys, I'm going to get out of here. Let's, speaking of music, let's find some cleared music that I can play without copyright issues. There we go. I tried for years to be a musician. I always went back and forth between athlete, musician, right? I played drums for 5 years when I was younger. I was always first chair, but because of that, I didn't learn to play a drum set because they always had me on timpani or first snare. And then, for years and years and years, even as an adult, I tried playing guitar, and at different times I would be okay at it. I could play along with stuff, but I just haven't put the time in lately. Just don't have time because I got to do this for y'all. A reminder that on the 23rd, I'll be at training camp. I will have access to the first few practices and be credentialed and be able to bring you some of that stuff from the practice field, the media availabilities, all of that. And then I get the opportunity at that point to sit down with the media relations department and talk about full-time credentials. That is the hope and that is the plan. That's why I'm driving back and bringing Butch with me as we leave on the 16th to drive across the country. So if you want to help support what I do, because it has been a lean off season, doing this full time for the first time and not having endorsements in the off season, there are a bunch of ways that you can support what I do. The longer term, big picture ones, if you could subscribe to Substack and Patreon, That's the stuff that's going to help make this self-sustainable for me. I am writing again. The Substack is up. It is completely free right now and will remain so until we get into training camp. And then it will be the minimum allowed by Substack, which is $5 a month. I know I tried to make it $3. They won't let me, but it will always. It's like Verizon does the price lock guarantee, right? Dan and the Seahawks Forever show is going to do the Substack price lock guarantee. But you can get in and subscribe now free, and I'm going to be posting stuff. And then once we get into training camp, then I'll turn on the subscriptions. And I'll tell you what, I'll make a vow to you right now. I won't turn on subscriptions until I get an answer on full-time credentials. So for those first few days that I'm there and I'm writing about what I'm seeing, that'll be free too. So go check that out. The Patreon, of course, I've also knocked that down to where there's just one all-inclusive tier. It's $10. There are some elevated tiers there, but only in case you want to donate more just to support the show. But $10 will get you everything that I do, ad-free, plus bonus material, plus all 22 stuff that I'm not allowed to post on YouTube. There's other ways you can donate directly, buy me a coffee or a beer, Cash App, Zelle, all that kind of stuff is all listed and linked down below. But subscribe to the channel. That is the best way that you can support what I do, and it's free for you. You just have to live with the ads. Sorry, I can't do anything about that. Thank you guys for being here tonight. This was a lot of fun. Have a great weekend. I'll be back with you Monday with Warren Sharp. Really excited about this from Sharp Football. I'm going to dig into his new preview guide over the weekend, at least as it relates to the Seahawks and the NFC West. And then he's going to join me Monday to talk about his analytics and what he expects from all of that. And then Rob Staten is going to be joining me on Tuesday. Haven't caught up with Rob for a while. That'll be fun to do before I get out on the road. So look forward to that. And then I'm cooking up a couple other things too so that I can stack a few shows and release some stuff while I'm out on the road. Thanks, you guys. Appreciate it. Thanks for being here. At Seahawks Forever on Twitter. Forever and always, go Hawks. See you next time.